Hopefully you enjoyed your snack break. Hopefully you got a little bit of a leg stretching and now you're sitting down ready to listen to more of our knowledgeable speakers. Now, the next person is here to talk to us about building compelling content that gets people to engage with your message. And I think he's going to be successful in engaging you guys because I was already at the edge of my seat just talking to him for a few minutes. It's my pleasure to introduce Ben Pearce. Remember, guys, if you do have any questions, I've been told he's got some very differing subjects. So keep an eye on it. Drop your questions whenever they come to your mind, because he's going to look to do some midway through Q&A. But now it's my pleasure to introduce Ben Pearce to talk to you guys.
Hey everybody, thank you so much for the lovely introduction, and it is absolutely brilliant to be with you all today. We're going to be talking about landing your security message with impact. But to be honest, if you're joining from any of the other stages, the stuff I'm going to go through today really helps land your security message, or your data and AI message, or your software dev message, or your business message, or in fact, any message that you want to land. So hopefully it'll be really useful. Before I start, let me introduce myself. So my name is Ben Pearce, and my background is I spent 20 years working at Microsoft, and for about 10 of those years I was a deep technical engineer in customer facing roles, so out and about with customers all over Europe, Middle East and Africa. And then after about 10 years moved into leadership roles, people leadership roles. And in those roles, I led security teams and security consultancy, data and AI teams, cloud solution architect teams, a variety of customer facing technical roles. So I did that for about 10 years. And then I left Microsoft a few years ago and started my own company, Elevated You. And what I do now is I help people in the tech world develop their human skills, their professional skills. And what we're going to be thinking about today is their storytelling skills and how they land messages and that kind of stuff. I want to start off with a photo. It's a photo of me of basically every project I think I was ever involved in. Here we go. It's not the most flattering photo, I will be honest. But this, for me, this photo represents me hitting a wall, right? From the wall's perspective. Nearly every time we gave some advice to a customer, right? This is something that you need to do, right? To change your security posture. These are some things that you need to change. Or perhaps it was about deploying a new solution. This is the new solution that we're going to deploy. Even when we got sign off to, to get things going, we hit wall after wall after wall after wall. And often the technology was the straightforward part, right? Not always easy, but pretty straightforward, the approach we needed to take. The problem was all the people we needed to work with. The folks from the security team, the networking team, the procurement team, the business team, the CTO, the CIO, the CDO, the every other O. We had all of these people that we needed to manage, take with us on this journey through what was a complex set of technology to give some kind of benefit. And actually, that was where I spent all of my time. And that's why I founded this company, because that skill was so important that I wanted to get out there and help people develop that skill, because that was how you got stuff done. You needed the technical chops, don't get me wrong, but you needed the ability to message it and influence people and drive change. And what I call that is technical storytelling. So this idea that we're in a complex world and we need to be able to persuade people, influence people to get stuff done. So I think if we kind of go through the techniques I'm going to hopefully share with you over the next half an hour or so, it's going to help you be more influential. And by that, I don't mean that you've got a pumping Instagram account that gets you free ice creams at the beach. What I mean is that people listen to you, that people have confidence in your position and in your advice, and that people are prepared to act on the things that you recommend, on the things that you say. So I think this is going to help you become more influential. I also think it's going to help you become more memorable. So that doesn't mean that you need to turn up to every business meeting, sit there on Teams or Zoom, and stick a cocktail stick through your tongue. But this is about people remembering you, about people remembering your message. about people not instantly forgetting the things that you've said, about people taking your message to heart and then wanting to do something with it. Makes you stand out from the crowd. And if you get those two things right, it's going to make you more successful. Whether that's people choosing your design, choosing your organization, people investing time in the technology that you're passionate about, or helping you build a community, whatever it might be that you're trying to achieve, if you get those things right, it's going to help you be more successful. And so I'm going to split today's session into two parts. Two things that I think that you can take away and start using this afternoon, tomorrow, the next time you've got an important meeting, the next presentation you need to do. These two techniques you can use. And the first one is a framework called Auran. And we're going to go through that first. And then the second thing is a little bit about visual aids and how we do some visual storytelling to be a little bit more impactful. So I'm going to start off by talking about a framework called Auran. Okay, so of course, Auran is a mnemonic and it stands for something. I always love to have these like little frameworks that are just rolling around in the back of my brain. And then when I'm called to use them, I can remember it. And it's a great foundation, a great way to start. So whenever I'm preparing for a presentation like this one or an important meeting, I create an Auran template. So Auran stands for audience, objective, remembered, emotion, and next steps. So audience, objective, remembered, emotion, next steps. And so I just grab my notebook, write down each of those little bits, and then I start to think about, right, for this session that I'm about to do, who's going to be in my audience? What's their objective? What do I want them to remember? How do I want them to feel? And what do I want them to do next? So what I'm going to do is just step through each of these in a little bit more detail. Now, this isn't the flow that you then deliver, as your presentation. It's the template that helps you make decisions, help you work out the right content, the right stories to tell, the right demos to show, the right slides to build, whatever it might be. So let's start by looking at audience. Okay. Most people think when they're giving a presentation, and this is weird, right? Because I'm doing one now, so I'm telling you how to do it whilst doing it. But most people think, right, the presentation, it's all about me. It's my presentation, right? I'm the one on the camera. I'm the one with the stories. It's my information. It's my demos. It's all about me. And I put it to you that is exactly the wrong mindset. The mindset you want to be in is that it's all about the audience. It's all about the people that are listening to you. They are giving you their non-refundable time, right? Even Bill Gates, Elon Musk, Larry Ellison, whoever it might be, with all of their money, cannot buy time. And so therefore, if I've got people listening to me, I want to put them at the center. Because if I put them at the center, I'm going to give them value. And if I'm valuable, I'm relevant. So really important to think about that the audience is the center. Okay, it's not about me as the presenter, it's about the audience. And if it's about the audience, you need to know who's in your audience. Not like a list of names, but what sort of people are going to be in the audience? Have we got a group of techies? Have we got a group of senior leaders, a bunch of graduates, seasoned software developers, enterprise architects, a mix? Who's going to be in the audience? Now, if we understand our audience and we get to know them and we can empathize with our audience and understand their perspective, then we can create messages that are relevant to our audience. And if the message is relevant to the audience, then that means it's going to be valuable. And if it's valuable, then you're going to be remembered, right? You're going to be selected. Your message is going to be used. So the first thing is to think about who's going to be in my audience and what's going to be relevant to them. So think about and jot down in your little template, right, who's going to be in my audience? The next thing then is to think about, right, objectives. I've seen some great presenters and some great communicators that will say, right, this is my objective. This is what I want to achieve by the end of this. I want to convince this stakeholder that this solution is the way forward. I want to convince this customer that our product is the best one. And that's great to get clarity on what your objective is. Some presentations, I'm not sure if they knew what their objective was or what they even wanted to say. But I think there's another level. And that level is to try and empathize with your audience as to what their objectives are. So if I think about it from this perspective that we're in here, this conference, okay. So my objective, right, is I want to help folks out because that's what I love doing. That's my passion, and also it's how I pay my mortgage, right? So this is my objective is to help you be more successful. That's what I want to do. But if I flip that around and think about, well, what's your objectives? You've come to this conference to be educated, to learn new things, maybe be a bit entertained, have a bit of fun whilst you're doing it, and have some tangible things that you can take away and do differently and help you in your career. So I'm trying my best to get into your mindset and understand what your objectives for being in this session are. And therefore, if I can try and speak to those objectives, then they're going to be really valuable and going to be really remembered. Okay, so we got to think about who's in our audience and have clarity in our mind what our objective is and what we think that the objective of the audience is going to be. And again, jot that down in your little template. Now, the next thing, remembered. There is an important thing to understand. What you transmit is not what is received. Okay, what you transmit is not what is received. We're not a TCP protocol here. What more UDP? There we go. What you transmit is not received. So that's really important, right? Because a lot of people think, okay, I've got all of these things in my brain. I know so much about this topic, whatever topic it is that you know loads about. And my job is to now get that into the brains of the people that are listening. No, that's not the job because they cut that. That's not how human brains work. What you want to do is say, okay, what are the things I want them to remember? What are the few things that I want them to remember? Maybe the 3 things that I want them to take away. And I'm going to build everything else about reinforcing those 3 things. I'm not just going to try and get everything out of my brain into that of the audience because they're not going to remember it. They might not be listening. And I'm guessing, right, we're on a digital conference. There's probably some people listening to me whilst heaven above, they might be doing email at the same time or web browsing or looking at Slack. People have given me a little bit of their attention. There's a lot of people on here that have perhaps got English as a second language. So therefore they're translating in their mind. So they might not understand some of the things that I'm going to say. It might be that midway through, like they start getting a load of WhatsApp, reminders binging, beeping and binging. There's a million reasons. Or they might just be bored and thinking about what they're going to eat for dinner tonight. So there's a million reasons why people will not receive what you transmit. So you've got to figure out what you want them to remember so that you can repeat parts, you can amplify parts, and you can really focus on driving home those 3 things. So think, what do you want your audience to remember from your session that you're giving? Okay. Think about what the key message is and get clarity in your mind. What is that key message? So again, if I think about what I'm trying to do with you, the key message is that being relevant and clear and memorable is vital for your success. That's the message that, the key message that I'm trying to give you. And then I've got a couple of points, right? I've got 2 sub themes that I'm going through this Auron sub theme 1, and I'm going to go through visual aids. That's going to be my sub theme 2. So I've got those 2 things. 3 is often best. That works with the mind, but I'm going for 2. And they need to support that key message. They're not separate topics. They all point back to that key message. And if you can get clarity in your mind and write down what are those 3 things that you want people to remember, then they will leave that communication remembering those 3 things, not the 157 things that you peppered them with and overwhelmed them with. So that's the remembered section. So we thought you need to understand your audience. You need to have clarity what your objective is and what their objective is. We need to get them to think, what is it that they remember? Okay, you want them to remember. And then the next thing is, how do you want to make them feel? I put it to you that there are not many technical presentations out there where the individual that's presenting says, well, how do I want my audience to feel? But it's really important because everybody listening is a human, okay? And we're going to go back to ancient Greece. We're going to go back to Aristotle. Aristotle said that there are 3 things that help persuade people. He said, firstly, you need some credibility, okay? What's your background? What gives you the right to talk to me about this? And how do you deliver that message, right? So that was the first bit, all about your credibility. The second thing was the rationale, the logic behind your argument, the strength of your argument, really important. But the third bit was the emotional connection, creating an emotional response with that person. And so if you just factor and think about data, logic, facts, you're missing the whole emotional connection. And actually, that's the third bit that helps you really persuade and influence people. And not only that, but it helps people remember your message. And there is this great quote. It's by Maya Angelou. People will forget what you said. People will forget what you did. But people will never forget how you made them feel. So people will forget all the things. You'll all forget the things I've said, right? You'll forget any demos that you might have done. You know, you're going to forget, what I said, what I did, but how I made you feel. That's the bit that remember. And how do we make people feel? Right? Bored, overwhelmed, stupid because they don't understand this thing. You know what is the emotion that we're trying to generate? Maybe we're trying to make them feel confident that this technology is the way forward and have confidence in me because I know how to help take you forward. Maybe we want people to feel shock at the problem, of the urgency of the situation they have. And we want them to make them feel that, but then have hope that there is a way forward. Think about how you want them to feel and make sure that you think about how you create that emotional connection when you're talking to people. These are 3 faces you want to avoid. The complete disinterest face, or on the face on the right, just keep going and let's see what happens. I'm angry now because of of the things that you just keep boring me with. All bad faces when you're giving a presentation. So, audience, objective, remembered, how do you want them to feel? And then what do you want them to do next? There's a great book called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I imagine some of you might have read it. One of the habits there is begin with the end in mind. Normally, a presentation or a meeting that you're in is not the end. It is the means to the end. Okay. It's the presentation that we do that convinces the stakeholder that means we can deploy the product and solve the problem. Okay. Or it's the conversation we need to have to get make a group decision and decide our path going forward. It's very rarely, the presentation is very rarely the end in itself. So think about what you want to happen next. The strategy that I often see in tech is we deliver his presentation, and then we say, I'll send you the slides, right? And that's it, right? That is it. So we send them a 70 megabyte document or a link to a 70 megabyte document full of pictures, and that is our strategy. And that's not a strategy to get things done and to drive action and push things forward. So be intentional on what you want your audience to do next. So what are the things? So if it's a bit of a broadcast, so like this at a conference where interaction's a bit limited, it's a lot more of a broadcast, then create your next steps to be as frictionless as possible, as easy as possible, and drive some action. Okay. But if you're in one of those types of presentation-y, meeting-y type environments where it's very interactive and decisions haven't been made yet, and we're going to decide what the next steps are in there, make sure at the end you've got 5 minutes to go, right, what are the actions? What are the actions? When are they going to be done by? And who's going to do them? And that then helps turn it from just a presentation and a meeting into something that drives action. So in this broadcast type setting that we're in today, what might I do? Well, I'll give you a sneak peek of what I'll pop up at the end as my next steps. So I've tried to make this as simple and frictionless as possible. So there's a nice web link there. Could have popped a QR code in maybe that takes you to one place. And in there's 4 things that I'm trying to make as easy. Come and connect with me on LinkedIn. I pop loads of free stuff on there. There's a podcast that I've got with loads of episodes about this type of stuff if you like it. You can get a newsletter every week if you prefer written content. And if you want me to come and work with you, book an appointment from that website, from that link. So in this example, those are the frictionless next steps that I'd encourage people to do. So what would that be if you're broadcasting or in a meeting and working with stakeholders? So I'm going to pause there. That's the first half covered. Aura and framework. So just to summarize, it's a framework that helps you make decisions. Write down the details of what they are, and then as you're choosing the points to make, the demos you might want to do, the slides you might want to create, the stories you might want to tell, use those as a North Star, as a guiding light to help you select stuff that will make it more influential and more memorable. Now, I'm going to pause there. Darren, I'm going to come to you whilst I have a swig of tea. Any questions? Have any questions come in, or does anybody want to put any questions in now?
I don't think we've had any come through just yet. Reminder, folks, you need to use the Q&A tab. So if you click across, you can type your questions out there. I did have one that came to mind for me when you were talking through this. I love the fact that you're saying, look at your audience, compel the audience, focus on what the audience wants from what they're watching.
Yeah.
One big issue in that is the classic kind of confirmation bias, right? We've all been there. You've written someone out. I do a lot of content creation on YouTube, and I make this brilliant thumbnail. In my mind, it's the best thumbnail ever. Everyone's going to love it. It's going to be fantastic. I spend 3 hours optimizing it, and then it goes live, and no one cares.
Yeah.
The question I've got is, how do you deal with your own bias infecting the truth of what the audience wants?
Great question. Great question. So for me, and this is an easy answer, but it's hard to say. It's hard to do in practice, right? The easy answer is empathy, right? So empathy is to take the perspective and understand the position of the other person, right? The question is, how the heck do you do that, right? That's the hard bit. So different scenarios, different techniques come out. So sometimes it might be that we find ourselves needing to influence the same stakeholders. Like, we know who the CISO is, we know who the CTO is, or the chief data officer, whatever. And actually, we can try and get in their mindset a little bit, and we understand what works for them, what doesn't work for them. So we can talk to them, ask them questions. So that's the first thing, is if you're in a position where you can ask people questions, then that's a really beneficial way to be. But do ask and get empathy for their perspective. Now, when you're if you're starting to talk about bigger crowds, then you can start to use the persona model, where you start to build personas of who the people are going to be that are going to be consuming this. And again, then maybe you could talk to people from that persona and actually talk to them and find out. That's a great way to do it. Or you could go to those personas and see what they're popping on, different forums, what they're sharing on LinkedIn, what they're popping on X, whatever it might be. You can see what they're doing to see what the issues that they're talking about. So get a list of those personas that you can use to help inform that. And then the other way, which I use a little bit, is of course using AI, and you can take ChatGPT and give it a persona and say, right, you are the CISO of an airlines company, because let's imagine that's who you're focused on. Right, you're the CISO of an airlines company, you are resistant to change, you have been in that role for 20 years, and you're a bit grumpy, right? You can build that persona in ChatGPT, and then start asking it questions. What are the key priorities for you at the moment? Now, it might hallucinate. It might not be the most accurate, but it also might give you a nugget of gold. It'll list 3 things and you go, I hadn't thought about that. And then that gives you a train of thought to go in and investigate. So I find that can be quite useful to do as well. I'm never going to take it as written in stone what comes out, but it's maybe going to give me some insight and help me leapfrog to a better place.
Oh, that was a fantastic answer. I think you hit it on the head, right? Like it's the classic one that comes to mind that I always remember is the whole idea of, like, because I come from a game design background. Worst thing you can do is hold an idea in your closet and not tell anyone about it and worry that someone's going to steal it, whatever, or someone's going to shame it. You need to get people out there kind of engaging with it, whether they are real people or AI driven. But I think that is all the questions we have for now. So I'll let you get into the second part of the talk.
Brilliant. Thank you. Let's do an experiment. Right. If you are multitasking while you're listening to me, stop multitasking for this second. Come in and look at this. Get me on the screen and get this on the screen, because I want to do an experiment with you. The thing that I'm about to tell you now is the most important thing. Okay, super important. So what I'm about to tell you that is so important has nothing to do with this slide. In fact, I'm going to turn it off. Because, and I'm leaving you deliberately with a black slide now, with nothing there. Because what I've shown you there is what I call the split brain. And if we'd done this face to face, and I've done this experiment many times, right? The point of the experiment is, I say I'm going to give you something really important and try and bring you in and listen. Then I pop a typical text slide up, right, which is full of bullet points. I bet everybody, if you're honest with yourself, started to read what was on that slide. Okay. It was quite text heavy. Let me just pop it up again. It's quite text heavy. And I bet people started looking at it. Now, that created what I call the split brain problem. So the split brain problem is where the visual aid that you are sharing distracts and reduces the power of your message and does not amplify it. Okay, so all I do is I split your brain, I split your attention, and you are neither concentrating on my narrative, the important things I want to say, nor the text that's on the slide. I'm splitting your attention, and that just reduces impact, reduces memorability, and reduces the effectiveness. And yet it is what everybody in tech does. The reason they often do it is because they treat their slides as their notes. Okay, visual aids are there to aid the thing that you're saying, not distract from the thing that you're saying. But we've kind of taken that with PowerPoint and turned it into our visual notes, which then distract from what we're saying. And I'm going to talk about that in 2 settings. The first setting is wordy slides, so what I just showed you. And the second thing is, well, what about when we need to talk about complex stuff and complicated diagrams and architectural diagrams and that kind of stuff? How does it apply to that? So let's start off and let's have a little think about wordy slides. And I am going to pop up that slide that I put there before. Okay. I'm going to let people have a little read because I know people are nosy, not nosy, but people are interested, and that's what they want to think about. But the point is, the stuff that I've put on there is really interesting, right? There's some stats that I found on the web. They might be a few months old now. But if I take the second bullet point, cyber criminals can penetrate 93% of company networks. So let's imagine, right? I'm giving a talk, and this is the the narrative that I want to go through. The thing is, I'm there talking about bullet point 2, right? Cyber criminals can penetrate 93% of company networks. But at the same time, somebody else is read ahead and they're on bullet point 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. And they're sat there reading that data breaches caused by negligence may lead to jail time for corporate executives. And so they're going, ooh, should people go to jail for their security? What, their security negligence? Is that what they should do? So I'm trying to talk about corporate networks, and they're thinking about going to jail. All it does is reduce the impact. What I should do is talk about that network piece and amplify that with my visual aids, and then later talk about the jail bit and then amplify that with the visual aids. So I should basically take those bullet points and put them in my notes, put them in PowerPoint presenter view or on some flashcards or whatever it might be, and move to a visual aid. So what would I do if I was presenting something like that? What I would do is, let's maybe take this first bullet point, and I would pop up something like this, right? So let me just talk you through what I've done here. So firstly, I've just gone to a royalty-free source. So this one's pexels.com. There's lots of different places, Pixabay, Unsplash, Wikimedia Commons, even PowerPoint itself has got some great stuff. There are loads of places where you can get images that you can use for free. So I've just typed in hacker, and of course it's someone with a hood, because we all know hackers always wear hoods. But as soon as you've got somebody in a hood, or there's something going on there. And then I love this picture. I think it's the Toronto skyline. And it's just this idea that there's a hacker surveying the skyline, and he can get into any network that he wants. And it's just quite nonchalantly sat there on the edge of a skyscraper. So it's really, for me, I love that image. And then all I've done, because I'm not a designer, right? I'm not very good at art. I'm not a great visual person at designing this stuff. All I've done is taken a black box, right, or a black rectangle. I've turned the opacity down a little bit, and then I've just taken the quote and put it in white in there. That's all I've done, right? So there's not much design. So you go to a royalty-free website or buy a stock image, pop it in there, put a black box, change its opacity, copy and paste the quote in, done. Looks really impactful. And so rather than use those slides, so what I'd then use is I'd use a slide per point, right? So I might have another slide, let's say where I was talking about the jail, and maybe I can get a picture of somebody in handcuffs and then just have another quote in there. And what it does is it amplifies the thing that I'm trying to say, makes it a bit more interesting, but doesn't distract and take away from the thing that I'm saying. So that's a great way to use visual aids. But what about when we have to talk about something a bit more complicated? Because we do, right? We're talking about complex tech, difficult business problems. We can't just put a picture of somebody in a hood and wave our hands around. We often need to help people understand more complicated things. So let's think about complex diagrams, okay? The first thing you can do is, of course, you can download icon packs from Microsoft, from Cisco, from AWS, from whoever it might be. You can download icon packs and generate your own diagrams, okay, that are nice and simple. But sometimes we don't have time to do that. And so we just want to get from the website, the reference architecture diagram, and we want to talk through it. So this is what I've got. So I'm gonna pop it up on the screen. And actually, this will do an experiment as well, because as this goes up on the screen, there's no title on it. So I imagine some of you are going, oh, what's this? Now you're not listening to me. you're looking at the architecture, you're trying to work out what it is. It's a data warehouse on Azure for anybody. And then you're going, oh, but is it old or is it new? Oh, that service has been retired. And oh, there's this new service, Fabric, that everybody's talking about. Where's that on there? So straight away, you get the point. I've put this thing up here, and everybody's disappearing off onto their own school of thought. And I've managed to overwhelm. But I do need to go through this detail, and I do need to get people to understand this. So how would I do it? So what I do firstly is I'd start off at a high level. I always find when we need to go from perhaps those big pictures, nice images, and we need to transition into something more complex, let's do it a bit more gradually. And also, that means if we've got people that are deeply technical in the audience and people that are less technical in the audience, I can help them all come together with me, but without being patronizing. So, for example, instead of going straight to this reference architecture, I would do something like this. Right, this is what we're going to talk about. A modern data warehouse for small and medium businesses. Again, this is a couple of months old, so some of the services might be a bit, might have been retired now, but I'd simplify it and go, right, when we're talking about a data warehouse, firstly, we've got this data that's coming in from all of these different sources. That might be IoT sensors. That might be feedback from customers, structured data, unstructured data. We've got all this data coming in. So we need to get hold of that data and get it in and bring it onto our platform. Then, once we've identified that data, we then need to load it. We need to ingest it. We need to bring all of that data onto our platform. So once we've got that data in our platform, then we need to store it, and we need to store that securely, and we need to store that so it performs at the right level. Then what we can do is we can start to process that data, manipulate that data, clean that data, make that data suitable for us to start to get business insight. And then what we can do is we can collaborate on that to generate the business insight that we want to get from that data. And we can get our data scientists or we can create our machine learning models, whatever we want to do. And then we can then serve that data out to our end users so that they can get the insight they need to make the decisions they need to make. So maybe I'd start off doing something like that. I've simplified it. And then all I've done is now taken that image that was just downloaded off the Microsoft website, and I've cropped it. I've just chopped it using the crop feature. So I can start to go to that next level of detail and say, right, okay, so we've got this stream of data coming in from IoT sensors, or this non-structured or semi-structured, or we've got databases, whatever it is. Okay, so we've got that data. We then bring it in, and we now load and ingest it using event hubs and pipelines. Then, and all I've done just behind the scenes is I've got a different slide. So each of these is a different slide, and I've just cropped the picture and dragged the crop and resized the crop. That's all I'm doing. There's nothing complicated here. And then I've just got a transition between the two slides. I think it's the morph transition between the two slides. So I've just got, so far, 3 slides with a different cropped picture and a morph transition between them. And so then I can talk about how you store the data, maybe in SQL. Then we can talk about how you process and manipulate that data, how you can then collaborate and consume on that data, and then finally how you might serve that data. So what I've done is I've taken something that could be really overwhelming, that would definitely cause the split brain and would reduce the amount that people were listening to me. And I've then managed the flow and revealed it a little bit more slowly. That means I can go through the narrative, keep people with me, and that increases the impact and, really importantly, helps people recall it. If I'd have just slammed this on the screen in front of everybody, you'd be overwhelmed and then wouldn't remember it. Whereas if I've talked it through, built it, crafted a narrative, and amplified that narrative with the visual aid, then that means people will have maybe followed it, understood it, and then can recall it at the end. So we have to talk about complicated stuff. Visual aids are a great way to help people learn complicated stuff, but think about the split brain. Think about how you use animations to marshal that flow so that you help people learn and help people recall the content that you've got. Well, those are the two main topics that I wanted to cover. So I'm just going to summarize. And if you've got any questions whilst I'm summarizing, pop them in the Q&A, and then we can go through any questions that we've got at the end. And I'm just going to summarize. Half the battle, if not more than half the battle of deploying a technical solution or driving some technical change is not the technology. It's about the people. You will have to influence all of these different stakeholders. And every time it's like hitting a wall when you've got their opinions, their perspectives, their agenda, their feelings, and you need to be able to persuade and influence people to do that. So if you can build your influencing skills and people then remember the things that you've said, then you are more likely to be successful. And when I was leading teams and I sort of looked at the people, I've led hundreds of people over the years, and I think about the ones that were really successful and really got stuff done, they were people that were able to technically, they had the technical chops, but also had the ability to influence people and to take their opinions and use their opinions. So I think it's a great skill that you can learn. It's not something you're just born with. It's something that you can develop, and that will make you more successful. So then we've thought about the Oren framework. So the Oren framework is a great little template to write down to help you think about the decisions that you're going to make when you generate that presentation or prepare for that meeting or write those communications. Who is in the audience? How can I build empathy with them in the audience so that I can build valuable, relevant messages for them? Okay. What is my objective? What do I want to achieve from this? And what do they want to get from this? And how can I speak to the things that they want to get from this? Remember, what I transmit is not what is received. I need to therefore decide what I want them to remember and try and use repetition and structure and reduce the number of things that I want them to remember. I want them to remember 3 things that I want them to take away, or maybe 4 things, or maybe 2 things, not 17 things, not 35 things. I just want them to take these key things and my key message away. I want to think about, how do they feel? How can I make an emotional connection to them? How can I use humor? How can I use intrigue? How can I use conflict? How can I use sadness, shock? How can I put these sorts of things in that are going to change people's emotional perspective, which helps persuade them and helps them remember stuff? And there's neuroscience studies that sort of show that is the case. But then remember, the presentation is not the end. Okay, so what are the next steps? How do we drive action? How do we turn it from a lovely session online into something that drives some action, that generates energy, that generates momentum? So the Oren framework is a great way to think about that. And then we then started to think about visual storytelling. So how do we use visuals to amplify our message and to step away from death by bullet points, which is what we do so often in the tech world? Think about how we can amplify the things that we're saying, how we control the flow of what comes up on the screen to amplify our message, and how we can use really simple resources like pexels.com, unsplash.com, Canva, PowerPoint. You don't need to be an amazing designer. You just need to think, is what I'm going to say going to distract people from what I'm saying, or is it going to amplify what I'm saying? And so next steps from my perspective, I've already given away the punchline there. I've already shown you this. So if you have enjoyed this session or you find this kind of stuff useful, I pop loads of it for free on LinkedIn. So connect with me on LinkedIn. It would be lovely to connect with you and listen and see what you're up to. I've got a podcast that comes out every fortnight. The last one was how to learn stuff fast. Whitney Lee was talking about how she learned stuff really quickly, which of course we need to do in tech all the time. If you prefer to read stuff, I've got a newsletter that comes out every week. And if you'd love me to come and work with your organization and do a deeper dive session with any of you, you can book an appointment with me, and I would love to come and work with you. It would be brilliant, all from that link there. That is everything that I wanted to say. So I hope it has been really useful for you. Darren, if we could come back to you one last time, are there any questions at all that have come in?
I think people are just soaking in the knowledge right now, my friend. And I think it actually comes out quite nicely. Thanks to our little mid-session Q&A, I think we're just about coming over our time for the slot.
Okay.
So what I'd say to people, and I'm sure you'll agree, if they want to reach out to you, if they've got questions, you seem like a very receptive fellow. And
yes,
kindly provided all these methods on getting in contact. So I think with that in mind, we'll get ready to close this one out. But Ben, absolute pleasure to hear from you. Some really cool insights there. And remember, folks, if you do have questions, all these could answer them for you, or you can just reach out to Ben directly. He has got, I think, a few links on his profile on the Pine app.
Brilliant. Thank you, everybody. Lovely to chat to you. Thanks for listening.
Thanks, folks.